So what are the specifics of an internal audit then? Well, it runs in parallel to the process of external audit. Remember, know thine enemy as they know thyself. So you need to understand both what's going on outside you, but also what's going internal to you. And it gathers information from an awful lot of other areas. And so there are full details of this in the handout. The internal audit checklist from David 2007 provides a useful comprehensive list of internal functions against which to review existing arrangements. Not all questions are appropriate to all organisations, but negative responses suggest areas of weakness and several negative responses in one section suggest action needs to be taken. The internal audit is a potential way to gather and consider information from human resources, marketing, finance and accounting, operations, research and development, management information systems and elsewhere. What you're looking for is both strengths and weaknesses. You're looking for all your functional business areas for the areas you operate. It will vary significantly by organisation. It may well be that parts of your organisation have strengths that overcome weaknesses in other parts. It may well be that in some cases it's about the people and the skills. In other cases, it might be about your technical abilities. And in some areas, it might be things might be need to be added in, such as research and development, etc., which might not be in the normal list that you come up. So it's up to you there. It is the basis for your objectives and strategy. You're internalising your strengths and weaknesses here. You're looking to try and build them up because then you'll be able to compare these with the opportunities and threats that you have identified from your external analysis, and you then must align what strengths you have and what opportunities you're trying to take advantage of clearly with the statement of mission at the beginning. Successfully doing this is the key to organisational success. Coordination and understanding of managers from all functional areas, involvement in performing internal strategic management order provides vehicle for understanding nature and effectiveness in other functional business areas of the organisation. So doing an effective internal audit allows you to build up the links across the organisation. It's important to recognise that you're looking for both of the things you do, but also for the things you ought to be doing but are not doing at the moment. So you range through there, get your organisation strengths, get your organisation competence section, you throw them together. All these organisation competencies combined become what we said were your capabilities. Many of them, your capabilities, are actually though dependent on the history of your organisation. Where else could they come from? That is how your organisation has developed, how it's built up over time. I'll actually tell you where it is they've come from, how they've been worked on. But there are some possibilities. For instance, you could form alliances. If you find there's a capability that you do not have, whether that be a tangible capability, an access to raw materials, a machine, or an intangible one, then perhaps you can form an alliance to get hold of it. Or rather than forming an alliance with equals, perhaps what you need to do is buy it, make an acquisition. In non-governmental terms, this might be sort of getting together with somebody and taking over them, and occupying certain areas. Maybe you do need to do research and development to investigate it, and maybe you also need to do training so that you prepare you for work forward. So training and development or research development of possibilities. There are two areas that we could consider, which are organisational culture and stretching added capabilities. We'll look at these in some depth in later lectures, but in the meantime, let's say organisational culture often plays a big role in the change process within organisations. It is therefore important to strategic management, especially where there is a perceived need to change the way the organisation relates to itself. We can look later on at ways of mapping organisational culture. Depending on the organisation, it may be appropriate to map the existing organisational culture as part of an internal review. It has been convincingly argued that whereas traditional views of strategy are plan then act, in reality it's not possible to really understand strategic capabilities until we actually implement change and plans. Strategy is therefore a living process, and we must expect mistakes and differences when we're really trying to build things. You cannot learn to juggle without dropping balls, you cannot learn to climb without falling off. The stretching and adding capabilities we'll look at later on. We're just going to strategic options, and these are some of these we'll take in there. We take our into account strategic capabilities, our threshold, and our core competencies. However, some things we want to do, some options we want to take out, will rely on an organisation's ability to stretch existing or add new capacities and capabilities. At the internal review stage, the organisation will be able to evaluate which capabilities can be stretched and where it would be possible with minimal investments to extend and add new capabilities. So at this point, we are looking at what is it we're not doing, but which you're going to need to do. And then we start to look at how we might get that. The point, of course, of all these exercises is we're going to be looking at the future at the TOES network, threats, opportunities, weaknesses, and strengths. And where we got our ideas of threats and opportunities from the environmental audit, alongside an idea of what there might be gaps, we are now our strengths and weaknesses from here. And the idea, of course, is whatever procedures we take, which we've looked at the last few years, what we're actually going to attempt to do, listing the resource and capabilities in order of importance, and they give a relative strength compared to other adjacent organisations. We should plot strength against important. The big mistake that is often made when working on capabilities is to make the assumption that if we're good at something, then it's also important. This is simply not true. There'll be a number of things in which we'll actually be good, but we make sure they're not that important. And some of our weaknesses, it may be that we think, oh, we're weak in this area, but unless we can show it's be somewhere in which it could be a threat to us, then there's probably no problem with being weak in them. So applying these tools of analysis is not an end in itself. It's only useful if the issues that emerge from the analysis are combined into a prioritised list of issues facing the organisation. One way to arrange this list is to group the issues into a series of strengths and weaknesses in rank order, with the most pressing issues at the top of the list. It's possible that items can appear as both strengths and weaknesses. For example, low staff turnover could be a strength in terms of continuity and working relationships, but also a weakness if it meant fewer opportunities for promotion and new ideas coming to the organisation. Later on, we're going to be examining how to develop the internal audit in combination with external audit to develop strategic options for the organisation as part of our consideration of what we call the TOES matrix, which is a thing of threats, opportunities, weaknesses, and strengths. But not particularly strong, but it's also something which is not very important, that falls into the zone of irrelevance. This is also true. So on the y-axis, you should plot the level of weakness. Weakness is 10 if it's very major weakness, or 10 if it's a major strength, 1 if it's something which you're not particularly weakness, and 1 if it's a major, if it's something which you're not particularly good. Now it may well be that something falls both into the area of both being something which you're not very good, but is of great strategic importance. If it's of great strategic importance, then of course it's very important that actually you deal with it, and then it becomes a key weakness. There may well be some things that are key strengths because they are of high strength value for doing that, and you simply plot them on this board. The idea, of course, is to exploit your key strengths and manage your weaknesses. There are occasions when it might well be that actually you could turn a superfluous strength into something relevant, because it can be very difficult. If you find you're very good at something but it's not really relevant, it can be quite difficult to get rid of it. Quite often what we see organisations do here is spin it out. They think, well, we're actually very good at this, perhaps they should work separately and they may find a use for it. It's just no use within our organisation at the moment. So your difficult decisions have to be made sometimes. They might not be the obvious ones. So bear this in mind. Just because you're good at something does not mean it's something that you should continue to do. Or just because you're weak at something doesn't mean it's something you have to overcome. If you're both weak at it and it's also not of great strategic importance, then it's going to fall into the zone of irrelevance and there's nothing to worry about.